Hi there, thanks for stopping by. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this pretty key tassel. I needed to replace a tassel and thought, yep, why not show you all how I do it. So, let's get started. In today's video, I decided that I am going to make a tassel to replace this very scruffy key tassel on our drinks cabinet. I probably made this tassel 30 years ago or so, could be longer than that, when I was first discovering how to make tassels. And it actually uses a silk thread that was hand dyed. I was very proud of it at the time, but as you can see, it's very faded and scruffy and dirty and the wrong color for a key that's handled regularly. So, time for a new one. Now, I'm going to actually make this one a bit heavier, a bit more substantial, and use up some other skills. And I am going to use a PaperLathe tassel mold. For any of you who aren't familiar with our PaperLathe tassel and bead system, it's a whole series of patterns so that you can make paper tassel molds. So basically all you need is a computer. It does have to be a PC at the moment. We have a USB available, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to work on more modern Apple Macs for some reason. And a printer, and they are basically PDFs. The artwork is all there as PDFs so that you can print it out and cut it into strips. I do have some other videos, I'll link them down below, about the PaperLathe system. But basically, you make your tassel molds. You get a whole range of tassel molds to make, but you also get a whole series of different rods so that you can, for instance, change the shape up a little bit by using a triangle or a square to roll around, not just as you would with a paper bead, although there are beads included in it. And you can also, there's different patterns, so you can make sort of cup shapes so that you can put things together and make all different tassels. And so you can paint these, you can cover them, you can basically do whatever you wish with them. So today we're going to use Soutache Braid, and we are going to do a method that's known as rolling, which is normally done with GIMP, but I have some nice Soutache Braid that will match the room that the drinks cabinet's in. So that's what we're going to use for this. I have one here that I have set up on a stick. I've got some blue tack because the stick is a little bit finer than the hole in the one that I'm using. I used I would say a 6mm rolling rod when I created that one. So they're the same, but they're different. They're different size holes. I have sanded the surface just a little bit to get rid of the ridges. You can really go at it if you want a very smooth finish, but I don't need one for this. And I'm using a trimmings table. You don't have to. I would say you do need a stick because you need to be able to control the rolling. This is slightly different than the trimmings table that we sell in that I have a white top for mine just for filming purposes. Normally you would have a clear top so that you can go ahead and put your patterns underneath it or any other things that you wish. So I'm just going to pop this in to be held in place in these upright struts. There is a cross strut here, but I can't be bothered to use it right now. So I have 1 meter 70 in Soutache Braid. Now, when you're rolling, you need to start. It's easier, neater and tidier if you sort of start midway or closer to the fatter part, and then you cover one way and the next. So I'm going to fold this off in half, and then I'm going to take it to about a third because I need more soutache on the fatter area than I will on the thinner. Okay, so I'm just going to set this aside here. I think about there will do. So the first thing to do is to use some glue. So I'm just going to basically put glue on the surface. You can use any type of glue that you want. I am using our dry fast glue simply because I found that it actually works for this sort of thing. That's why we sell it actually. It's a PVA glue, but with a lower water content. If you have a very high water content PVA glue, which is what you'll get in a lot of paper crafts, you will find that it doesn't stick textiles so well. This glue I also used to make the actual PaperLathe mold, but I do water it down to do the rolling. I just find it works a little bit better if it's not so thick, if you're actually making the PaperLathe mold. It's just moving a little on my stick, so I'm just going to adjust that blue tack so that it stays still. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just basically smoothing out this glue so that I've got glue covering all of the surface. And of course at the same time I'm letting it go a little bit tacky before I start attempting to stick anything onto it. This is not going, I'm filming, it's going to end up being a messy job. I can just sense it, so you're pre-warned. I'm going to keep that there because I might decide that I want a little bit more glue. So, first things first. Just place the soutache. I'm going to get another stick just so that I can press this and try to keep it neat and tidy. Now because this is my shorter length, I'm going to roll this piece on first. And so the object is just to lay it down. It's not the easiest thing to do because you're turning one direction and then the next. I'm going to take this longer length. I'm just going to tuck it under there so that I can move with it. Okay. I don't want it to bulk up too much. And so basically, you're rolling and you're slightly changing the directions so that you can actually get this in place. So you want a glue that's going to sort of adhere it well, but perhaps not too quickly, because what you don't want is to not be able to pull it back off if you've gotten it in the wrong place, because invariably you can guarantee you'll get something in the wrong place. This is a really nice way to cover, you can use GIMP, you can use braids, you can use cords, you can use just about anything you can think of. And you don't have to have sort of the skills of knowing how to satin wrap. I think a lot more people probably feel confident doing this. I'm not going to work right to the end yet. I want to get this other side done and then I can bring it up and actually hold the stick in my hand, which will make it a little bit easier to see the ends. So I'm getting to the point where I want to see it on both sides. So I'm just going to take this off, and then I can turn the mold and I can actually see what I'm doing. Now, using Soutache, you could, if you wanted to be very, very clever at this point, you could slightly gather up the Soutache, which is to say, you see how it sort of kinks a little bit. You can, if you wish, estimate and then pull one end so that it will gather up a little bit more. But because I'm going to do something else over the top of this, I'm not really worried about that. Now I want a bit more glue along here. I think I'll actually put some more glue in. Just set that there. I'm just going to move that blue tack up out of the way for a moment. I want to try to get as close to this hole as I possibly can. You see, this is what I mean about pulling on a piece of the Soutache, because it's going quite flat at this bottom. I'll show you in a moment, I'll take a little cut piece, and if you want this part to be seen, then that method will work. Because I'm going to put something here that's going to effectively cover this very bottom section, I'm not really that worried about it for what I'm doing. My main thing is to make sure that this is well secured so that it doesn't fall apart when we go to get drinks at Christmas. So I'm just going to press that in, make sure that's in the glue well, and work on the other side. So there is the covered tassel mold. I did have a little bit extra of each of the pieces of Soutache, which you could use as a cord. I'm going to actually probably use a different color. So what I was saying to you about pulling on the threads. Okay, so here's a small piece and it's nice and straight. If you get a piece of commercial Soutache and you can find the center part where it takes a little while, but it's like a thicker thread. There we go. If you pull on just the threads from one side, you can get it to curve. And so you can get it to fit very well around a tight curve. Just remember that the side that you pull is the short side, so it's the one that's going to curve in, while the one that you don't pull should be on the outside. So if I was concerned and part of my plan was to show this more completely, that would be the way to finish off the top or the bottom, because you would get a nice smooth finish. But as I say, this is going to be pretty much covered. I've decided that I want to have a pom-pom on the bottom of this tassel. I think that will last a little bit longer than just a tassel, because then if it goes all fluffy, well, that's what pom-poms are meant to do. Obviously, there are many different ways that you can make a pom-pom. You can make one on a tassel board, you can make them on pom-pom looms, or you can make them with two upright posts. I'm going to stick with the tassel board just because it's a little bit easier for me for this particular size, and I think for filming it might be a lot easier. I'll just move that out of the way, give us a little bit more space. And I'm going to be using some cotton Perle number 8. And basically, I am just going to wrap. I'm going to go around and around and around and around, and I'm going to wrap probably about 150 times and just keep going around this. So the thing to remember is when you're making a pom-pom, more thread is better. You don't want a wishy-washy pom-pom. You want a nice fluffy one. So if you're not sure, add some more thread. In the end, I ended up winding about 220 times. I have very little thread left. I've just kept a little bit in case I decide to do the next stage, if I decide I want a matching thread. Haven't quite decided yet. So the next thing to do, dampen the threads top and bottom. Okay, I usually use a little spray bottle, which has disappeared, but you can just dip your fingers into some water, use that, or as I'm going to do, I'm just going to nip over and put it under the tap. I don't want it soaking wet, I just want it a little bit damp so that it makes it easier to compress these. I think the camera maybe is just about picking up that there is some water there. So the next thing is to take some strong thread. I do have a preference for linen, just because it is quite strong when you wax it. But of course, there's a lot of strong polyester threads and so on at the moment that you can get. So it doesn't really matter. Whatever you've got that is a strong thread, you can't easily break. Wax it, so waxing it will help the tie to stay in place when you tie it. Now I like to loop the thread over, bring it around. Now if you have a flat a solid tassel mold that you're using, then go ahead and just tie through and do it through just a half of it as a temporary tie, and then tie it up tight afterwards. I'm just going to loop that through. And that wax thread is helping to hold that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this so that I can take it off. This isn't to make the tassel yet, because I still want to tighten it up even tighter. So that's why I said you can, if you're using a solid piece of cardboard, for instance, thick card, you can go ahead and tie it temporarily just to give you all of your bits a similar size and give you something to wind over. Because I want that as tight as I can possibly get it. That will really help give you a really good pom-pom. Oop. Nearly went off the screen then. Right. And as I said, because I've waxed the thread, it's not slipping back out on me, which is really helpful when you're working on your own. I'm going to tie that in a knot so it's nice and tight. Now, I'm going to roll it round in my hands. Now I want to get it to a bit of a pom-pom shape before I start trimming. Now the thing about a pom-pom is you need to start out a lot bigger than you end up. And that's because you're going to trim it and trim it and trim it and trim it so that you get something that looks really dense. Now because I want this to go on the bottom of the tassel, this trimming, if I want, can be a little bit more, I don't need to worry quite so much this way. If I want to, I can make it sort of a shaped pom-pom. But basically, all I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut. Snips are good for this because you can sort of go in and give it a haircut. So, that's looking pretty good. No, let's try again. Pom-pom topiary, nearly complete. I could probably trim a little bit more off. And as you can see, there is a lot of excess there. It feels like a waste, perhaps, but it's definitely what you need to make a good pom-pom, is to really trim a lot of it off. You could always use that as stuffing, probably, for a project. So we have a pom-pom. What are we going to do with it? We're going to add it to our tassel. And that's, you see, is going to sit at the bottom. That's the plan. However, I want to have a little bit of decoration on this, also in a green. In order to work what's called barre, you need to have your thread that you're creating the barre at tension. So, around 2 fixed points is the best way to do this. I am using the trimming table 2 bars. You could use our button station. clamping that to the side of the table because you need the tension, okay? Or any other 2 fixed points. You could even, if you don't have 2 fixed points, you could tie the end to a chair or something and sit away from it. There's lots of ways around it without having to have all the different equipment. I'm going to put a little piece of tape on the end. In fact, I'm going to do it this end because it's already got tape on it. Just because the soutache is really slippery, and so it doesn't always maintain the tension. Going at a figure of 8 helps to also maintain the tension. I've got a piece of linen thread on a needle. That's going to just, I'm going to use a larger needle actually. It's best if you can use a blunt needle, and you need a needle that will go the length of your button mold. So doll needles are good. You can sometimes use plastic needles. Blunt is obviously hard to get when you're looking at sort of bigger, longer needles. They usually still have a sharpish point on them. So if that's the case, thread through with the other end of your needle. I had one here that has disappeared. That one should just about do. That's because you can't see the other side of my desk. Right, I'm just going to wax this linen. It'll just help it to stop slipping. I'm going to work a series of half hitches at the bottom just to attach this to the cord, to the Soutache braid. So that's a go around in a C. Okay. And come up around and through that. This needle is still too sharp. I'm going to get another one. Right, nice large needle. That isn't so sharp. It's not going to poke me in the fingers. Now I want to make sure that that is as secure as I can make it. I'm going to trim the end, but not too close to that tie. So, marking off. I want to have 5 divisions, so 5 bars going up. So the way that I have marked this is use the circle gauge, this is what makes the circle gauge nice. You know, we have our button wheels for marking off buttons, but these are nice for dimensional things. And basically, I've lined it up at the bottom, and I've placed a pin at each of these notches. Okay, so this way you can mark off anything dimensional. You can mark off on the side of something if you want. Remove that, and then I don't know if you can see, but I then penciled in little marks on this space so that I can remove the pins and carry on. So now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go up from the bottom. Actually, I'm going to go up from the bottom. Because this is 5, you're going to end, usually you would do an even number, basically. So it will become clear shortly. So I'm going to just pop that in ever so slightly, and this is where the tension needs to be held. So let me just pop that there so you can still see. So there's some tension. Okay, so I'm going to let that go over one of my marks, hold it at tension, bring it up and around, and then take that thread around the soutache and pull in just slightly. That's why you need to keep it at tension, because as soon as you don't, that pull in slightly doesn't work. Then go to the next side. Give myself a little bit more here. I'll work a little higher up, which hopefully will stay in camera shot a bit better. And then come back down. Where's my mark? It's there. So I want to be a little bit further over to line up to the mark. You could mark top and bottom if you want to as well, but I don't think it matters that drastically. I'm going to keep that at tension. There's my mark. Come back down. Pull in. And then go to the next. And you see my soutache is starting to twist a bit, which it will because the way that you're turning. So just smooth it out with your needle. And that would be the same with any cord that you use. If you've got a bit of a point, you can also go down with the back end of the needle if you think it's going to catch on any of your thread. Pull it in, off to the side. Flick that off. That's way too far over, I think. Just about there. Pull in, come around, and there we go. And this is what I meant. I'm now ending at the top. Now normally you would have an even number, and so therefore you would end at the bottom. So I'm going to go down to pull it in. Okay. I'm going to come back up. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to bring it all of the way through as far as I can get it through. Now that should, it's catching on something, so we need to get it past what it's catching on, because I want to leave this open. It's just coming through now. I'm going to use a little stick to help it along its way. There. So now it's finishing at the bottom, and I haven't got anything to muck up the top or the appearance of the tassel at the top. I'll take off that fat needle now. Go ahead and get a thinner one, and just take this through just to give it a little bit of an extra security. Okay, so now that's nicely covered. And now to make the loop, I'm just going to use the soutache again. I don't need anything too fancy. I quite like the length of this, the way that it looked on the drinks cabinet. So I want at least that much. So let's say, what you need to do is you need to know that you're going to have enough to come all of the way through, okay? And I'm going to tie a good knot at the bottom here. Now that knot is not going to fit in there. It's going to sort of just sit at the end, which isn't really what we want. So actually I'm going to rethink this. Take the knot back out again. I'm going to do it slightly differently. Okay, I'm going to now stitch that to this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a binding knot instead at the bottom here. Now, what's a binding knot? Take a loop of thread. Okay, I know it's going to be a little bit difficult because I'm matching instead of doing opposite colors, but and I'm holding the loop up towards the top. And now I'm going to wrap the long end around the end of the loop and everything else that I need to wrap it around. And I'm going to keep wrapping, working up towards the loop. I'm going to go as tight as I possibly can. And when you get so far up, you take that loop back through, the end back through the loop, and then you pull on the other end to take that inside. Okay, now because this isn't going to be seen, I'm also going to tie a knot. Normally, if this is a knot that you can see on something, you would take your time and you wouldn't tie this extra knot. You'd make it longer so the threads hide underneath. Okay, so that's step one. There's our loop. Okay, step two, we need to attach this to the loop. So I am literally going to sew this through the soutache at the bottom. Now I want to be as close to the bottom as I can. I take those ends that are there, and I'm not going to cut them because I may as well try to secure everything as much as I possibly can. But basically I'm going to stitch that up to that end. And now the next bit is to get this inside of that. I like to take a stick and make sure that I have a clear run through, okay? Because if you messed up and you didn't quite get, if you crossed over, you're not going to have a clear run through, and that's going to make your life really difficult and frustrating. Okay, so we have the clear run through. Now, piece of wire. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. If it was a single cord, you could take the wire through and just pull it up. You can hook, because this is we've already doubled it, you can hook it round like so and then take the wire up. Now I'm going to do it that way, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend down these ends of the wire so that they are blunt, so that those sharp bits aren't sticking on anything as we go up. And you just have to maneuver it through. Then you can pull up. As easy as that. Now, before we go all of the way through, I want to put a little bit of glue on this. Let's just remove this wire. And I'm going to put the glue at the bottom of the cord. So I'll put glue here and I'll put glue on the soutache. And then line it up so that it goes in as neatly as possible. Take your time on this bit so you don't get glue going everywhere. And then pull up and pull it up quite tightly. And then for good measure, if you really want to, you can take some glue This is where a glue pen comes in handy, because you can just inject some glue down inside. And notice I split the cord there when I did that. That way, when the cord is up, you won't see any residue that might be there. And then just basically leave that to dry. Go ahead and perfect your pom-pom if you wish, but leave the whole thing to dry before you actually use it. And then we have a nice little pom-pom key tassel with Soutache Braid. And so, the question on everyone's lips, how do you put a loopy key tassel onto a key? Put both loops through, take the key all the way to the end, and there you have it. And so, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will put some links in the description box below for the different materials that I've used on this video. If you enjoyed the video, do please click like, hit subscribe, click the bell icon, and you'll be notified when I next upload, including when I next go live. And until the next time, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.